I'm like the baddie. I left, and then Ethereum decided to go to the gym.
All right. Thank you for doing this, sir.
Thanks for having me.
To start with, can you please tell me your name and what you do?
So my name is Max Reznick. I work at Onza, which is Solana core development project, and we developed the Agave client, which is the primary client that runs on Solana mainnet today. We basically make IBRL happen. So everything we do is trying to make increased bandwidth, reduce latency, makes the Solana protocol better. My role specifically there is I'm an economist, so I work a lot on incentives, on market structure, on how these kind of core, very complicated blockchain primitives interact with incentives and people. And, there's a big side of blockchain, which is cryptography, and a big side, which is consensus. And then the third kind of piece of the triangle is incentives and economics. And so that's the part I work on.
Very cool. We'll get into what you're doing now in a little bit. But first, can you tell me a little history? Like what led you on this path to what you're doing today?
Yeah, I guess I started out in crypto. I had a algorithmic game theory class at the University of Michigan where I did my undergrad. And the professor was not a big fan of Bitcoin, but he thought Bitcoin was like a good piece of applied algorithmic game theory. So he had a section at the end of the class where the students would teach the lectures. And so he didn't teach Bitcoin in the main course that he wanted to teach because he didn't like it too much. But he said, if somebody else wants to teach it, it's a good applied AGT. So that's how I got in. I just read the Bitcoin white paper to prepare a lecture for that class. And then from there, I think I read like the Polkadot white paper, which I was super excited about at that point.
Wow.
And had like some unpaid internship. I got a job at a startup, which ultimately we had like this idea. It was an insurance startup, and we used a smart contract to do automated payout. And so this was great because users could be sure that they would get paid out. It turned out that insurance is actually a business about not paying out the claims. So that didn't work out too well.
Yeah.
But
the secret's out.
Yeah. And at that point, I was like, I need to do something else. I wanted to do something that was really closely aligned with my background, which is auction theory, MEV, market design. So then I joined the SMG Special Mechanisms Group. And there we worked on MEV, we worked on market structure, doing a lot of research. And eventually, about a year after I joined, we got acquired by Consensus. And I was at Consensus for a year. While I was at Consensus, I started getting a lot more involved with core Ethereum protocol research, started becoming a lot more vocal on that front.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, I got really frustrated with the state of things. And I was like, maybe there's another place that has a higher potential energy that, potentially I could have a higher impact. And so I joined Onza to work on Solana.
Right. Great. And we'll get into that in a second. But yes, so at Consensus, you were the special mechanism. You were in the special mechanisms group, where you contributed to Ethereum's protocol research. What exactly were you working on?
Right. So we worked specifically on the kind of mechanism design aspects of the protocol. So we did a lot of research on things like 1559, so fee markets, things that affect the market structure. So multiple concurrent leaders, multiple concurrent proposers was a thing that we were strong advocates for. Also just doing some other stuff like talking about delayed state root, which is kind of a core, it's kind of a technical thing, but it's a prerequisite for a lot of the economic changes that we wanted to advocate for. We talked about the exit queue for stake, and actually they're working on an EIP right now that's been released at SMG about the exit queue.
Based on some of the work that you
Based on some of the work that I did while I was there, yeah.
Cool. So I think the important thing to note for those who are unfamiliar with you is that you were heavily in the Ethereum ecosystem and I would say deeply into the kind of the guts of the protocol, right?
Yeah.
You're not just some guy like me on a camera who's like, Solana. Right. And then, as you said, you got frustrated, I guess, and you became vocal. You kind of started to talk about your frustrations. Kind of take me through that that little piece there?
So I think we had a period of like wandering through the desert on Ethereum, and there are people who are very vocal who will come up with an idea. It's kind of half baked. They go on stage, they present it, and then for a year after that, you have like 20 new pieces, one every week, by a new guy saying the same thing about the same thing that doesn't work for the same exact reason. No new arguments are presented. And for me, one thing that kind of catalyzed that, a specific thing that really was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, was this idea of execution tickets. And it didn't have any real user impact whatsoever, but it just was sucking up so much time from the developers. And that was kind of the pattern for all of the stuff that I worked on, which was the incentives related stuff. Was somebody would come up with an idea. It obviously didn't work. You could identify it in 5 minutes, and then they would just keep talking about it, waste time, 10 talks. And you kind of have to keep up because people keep asking you about the latest version, which says exactly the same thing as the first version. And that was kind of my fear, like, hey, we need to do something to actually make the protocol better for users, not, some research academic. Like, we need to increase the gas limit. We need to lower the block times. It's kind of absurd to be at 12-second block times, 15 transactions per second in the year 2025. And that was kind of my point of like, hey, we need to focus on the L1 scaling, stop focusing on these L2s. They're just leeching from the protocol. So,
and obviously, you felt like you had these criticisms, and they weren't really addressed, right? They were basically not ignored is the wrong word, but people disagreed with you. I suppose.
I would use the word gaslit, because
okay.
the people that are now so fervently in favor of scaling the L1, which is exactly what I said 8 months ago, are now saying that. And at the time, what I should do is go back and Mert style, I should grab all their tweets. This is what they said 8 months ago. They said, I'm like a traitor. They said, L2s are the best thing since sliced bread. They're God-given L2s. They said all that back then. And now that enough people have woken up to what I was saying 8 months ago, they're all on board the other train. So there's just people who, Ethereum has a really large and powerful social layer, but the social layer doesn't have a lot of immune response to bad ideas, especially in the case of the L2 roadmap. That was Vitalik's idea. He put the post out 4 years ago, and it was not a good idea. And we know that was not a good idea because they've admitted that he's admitted that L1 scaling was the way forward. But when it comes from Vitalik, he obviously has a lot of respect. He's a very smart guy, and he has a lot of gravitas in Ethereum.
Yeah.
And so they're not going to reject it quickly. And so it took a long time for them to reject what was, in my opinion, obviously a bad idea. But congratulations to them for doing it. Like, there's a Japanese proverb: when you get on the wrong train, get off at the next stop.
Yeah, I've seen you post that.
Don't keep going because you're embarrassed to get off because somebody might notice that you got on the wrong train. So
because it gets more expensive to go back the other way, right? When you finally have to admit.
Yeah. So congratulations to them for finally realizing the right approach. I wish them the best of luck.
I would say, though, that maybe giving you and some others credit, it probably had to take people like yourself to leave for this to change, right? Like, I imagine just, dealing with humans, it takes like kind of a bad breakup or something to kind of, change your life, right?
Yeah. I'm like the baddie. I left, and then Ethereum decided to go to the gym.
Exactly. And you're like, what? I told you to do that for so long. Okay. You said something that I thought was interesting. You said that you thought it was obviously the wrong thing to do. Not the but the Ethereum roadmap of L2s was obviously the wrong thing to do. And it was obvious to you. It wasn't obvious to me because I'm an idiot. So why was it obvious to you? And was it obvious to you from the very second you heard about L2s, or did it take some time?
I think so I do this thing where I focus on my little area and I work on that area, and I try not to, pick my head up. When I pick my head up, usually I find things I don't like. But in this case, I kind of ignored the existence of L2s for a while. And then when I finally had to confront it,
Why,
partly
why did you have to confront it?
just because they were getting so big and
Okay.
they were taking so much activity. And, you know, I was working at Consensus at the time. I could see our metrics internally of how many users were using the L1 versus the L2. You know, it was time to like look at it. And I think what really started it was this 4844 upgrade, EIP 4844, which was proto-dank sharding. And I would describe it as a subsidy for rollups. It was actually proposed by some people who work at the rollups. And what it did is immediately took the gas cost for posting data, which is the number one thing that rollups spend gas on, down to zero, basically. And what it did overnight after 4844, gas fees on Ethereum dropped substantially. And it, it was like, this is the opposite of the thing that we need to give a subsidy for. Like, we have users using the chain, they need their gas costs reduced. The price of the log operation, like literally logarithm, is 500 times more expensive than it needs to be. The thing that's not more expensive than it needs to be is like corporate roll up like Coinbase making $200 million a year doesn't need to pay less than $1,000 a year in blob fees.
Yeah.
So I was pretty annoyed by that at the time.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite a mistake. And they would say to you, they didn't even think about the impacts on the L1 revenue or value capture or anything. They just YOLO'd it and just shipped it, and there we go.
Yeah. I can see that. Okay, so was it hard? Was it a hard decision to move to Solana? Because I mean, I know you must have known you would have gotten massive pushback, and people who, you know, and friends and colleagues that you were knew would be upset with you. I can imagine it being a bit rough.
Yeah, definitely Ethereum is my first love always, but it's not my current love, and
Moved on.
I've moved on from it. I'm really happy on Solana. There's still a lot of people I'm friendly with in ETH land. There's a lot of people who I was never friendly with in ETH land who are not super happy with me, but they weren't super happy with me when I was saying all these things in ETH, and now they're unhappy with me that I've left. I don't know. Pick your poison, right? Like either I'm inside like telling you guys how to do your job, or I'm on Solana telling you guys how to do your job. But yeah, I would say I'm pretty happy about it. It was definitely difficult, especially leaving my team at SMG was the hardest part for me, just because I had built up a team that really enjoyed working with and had a lot of trust in. But it was the right decision, I think, in hindsight, because there's so much potential energy on Solana in terms of core dev resources, willingness to make changes to the protocol, and combine that with the fact that there is just a lot of potential improvement you can make to the protocol. So that's a perfect storm of like the right things in the right place. And I'm very happy about the decision.
Cool. All right. So 2 more questions. Speaking of like, I guess like a willingness to change though, you were recently a part of this, SIMD 228, right?
Yeah.
This was to basically make kind of dynamic market-based inflation rates. Is that correct? Something like that? No, it didn't end up passing. But the discourse online was quite interesting for me to watch on both sides. You worked on some of this research and I guess incentives as well. Can you please talk about this? Tell me about it. Give me a kind of like a debriefing and like next steps forward.
Yeah. So I guess the thing that happened, we had this dynamic issuance proposal, SIMD 228. I was actually not originally an author on the proposal, so Tushar and Vishal from Multicoin came out with this proposal, and I was basically asked to comment on the proposal by certain people with, basically Anatoly asked me to comment on the proposal, and I had some comments, and eventually we were like, let's incorporate the feedback from these comments into the proposal. And of course, it makes sense for the economists to comment on the inflation proposal. So that's how I got involved. It really makes sense to have dynamic inflation, because when things are going well, you want low inflation. When things are not going well, you want high inflation. And that's the basic idea. And overall, we wanted to cut issuance because that's how we make the protocol more sustainable in the long run. Generally, there was a lot of support. So we had 62% yes, 38% no. So, we won the popular vote, but actually we need 66%. To it's a signaling vote to make sure that the chain doesn't hard fork and dissolve, basically.
Right.
So we want at least 66%, 2/3 of the network to say we're ready for this proposal. I think if I had to diagnose the issues with the proposal, partly it was like a skill issue on our part. It was a learning experience. Like, how do you do these contentious votes? Because we've never had one this contentious before. And part of the thing that we missed is reaching out to people that we didn't reach out to and understanding their concerns and incorporating those. For the people who were concerned, who we did reach out to and did incorporate the feedback, they ended up flipping from no to yes. But there was a bunch of people who had very reasonable concerns that we didn't talk to because we didn't know them that well. And if we had talked to them, I think we could have reached a compromise that would have been.
Sensing in this conversation like a theme of this theme of like a relationship really does communication, right?
Communication for sure. And it's a lot of people. Like, people think Solana Validator says just, 5 guys in the Discord, but it's actually a lot of people. We have almost 1,000 validators, and they each have a say in this, and you just got to call them up. It's like if you tried to pass a bill in the House of Representatives and you didn't talk to half the senator or half the reps, like, you wouldn't pass it.
You're not getting
You have to call up everybody, and I think that's what we learned. And we will eventually bring something that is, probably a little bit more measured, a little bit longer term, more gentle, and more of a compromise. We've been talking to a lot of the people who did vote no and making sure that it's something that everybody can get on board with. But it was definitely a great learning experience to see, how this process works, because we didn't know what would happen.
Yeah, I guess the biggest criticism I saw from people who voted no was just that the stability aspect, right? Like having that variability can make, at least this is what they said. My interpretation of what they said is something like to that effect.
I think like there's a parallel here with, if you look at the tariffs, right? The whiplash effect is not good for anybody.
Exactly.
Like, companies need to do long-term planning. We have a bunch of ETFs, like issuers. They're trying to do staked ETFs, custodians. Like, these people need to be able to do quarterly budget, like year review, and not be, whiplashed by some inflation proposal. So that was a big learning. Like, things need to be, there needs to be forward guidance, and there needs to be longer term rollout plans, because people have made plans, and disrupting them, I think, was a big part of why a lot of if you look at the demographics of the people who voted against, it was like people who had plans that
interesting
depended on this.
Very cool. I like
those would be disrupted.
All right. Well, I have one more question for you. I hope I can interview you again, because I would love to ask you some more questions.
Yeah.
So maybe if I see you at another conference, I might hit you
sure.
up. But just for now, obviously Solana's not perfect. Your new love is better than your old, but there's still some warts somewhere. Can you please tell me where do you think are Solana's kind of weakest points or biggest challenges?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is, I think, if you ask me to identify the weakest points, which I think is consensus, basically all of consensus is very much weaker than what it could be. I think, like, if you ask me to identify those things, we're working very hard to fix out all of them. So it's very nice that, you ask me that question, and then I can think of like fee markets, consensus, MEV, and we're working, like, those are the things that we're working on. I also think we're like not scaling enough.
Oh, interesting.
And the block times are too long, which is exactly what I said about ETH. But we're working on those too. So all of those things we're working on really hard. And there's nothing I feel is like a super big bad issue that there aren't really smart people, capable people working on right now. So,
and I take it that, unlike maybe in Ethereum, they're not taking the wrong approach to solve those problems. You think it's kind of like going in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, it's, at the end of the day, you have to take the medicine. You have to just sit down with a profiler. Profiler, you run a program and it tells you what's the most expensive part of the program. And if you want to make really fast software, it's not just a theoretical question. You sit down, you write the first draft, you profile it, look at the thing that has the highest cost, rewrite that component, do it again, iterate on this. And we have people doing that.
Oh, cool.
And then there's also some theoretical stuff that needs to happen as well. But like, that's the thing that's really driving. We just went to 50 mil CU. We're going to 60 mil CU at the end of this release. We're committed to 100 mil CU by the end of the year. That's what drives that. Like, that's not theory. It's just like hardcore, roll up your sleeves, run the profiler. This is what Alessandro does all day, and fix it, you know.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.